I'm trying to picture in my head Batman meeting this version of the Joker.
It's over, Joker. Why is there piano?
What's up, Flick fans? I saw Joker number 2, Folie À Deux. I'm going to talk about it, just me and you.
They believe Arthur Fleck to be some kind of martyr. Well, he's not.
What if I made this review a musical? So, Arthur Fleck is institutionalized at Arkham awaiting trial for his crimes as Joker. While struggling with his dual identity, he not only stumbles upon true love, but also finds the music that's always been inside him. Of course, this is rated R. There's violence, language, some sexual stuff, brief nudity. Not as much violence as the first movie. I loved how the first Joker was able to kind of exceed expectations because people were looking for a Joker movie with Joker doing Joker-type things, and I thought that first one absolutely delivered. Arthur Fleck was a really interesting character, and Joaquin Phoenix gave a great performance. I know there are people that don't like the first one.
Well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
And I've seen the references, comparisons, I get it, but I loved the first one, man. Such a unique experience. And I know a lot of like non-cinephile friends that love the first one, and they're asking me already about this sequel, knowing that I've seen it, and they're all like, hey man, how is it? Is it great? Is it everything I thought it would be? And I stop them in their tracks and I say, it's nothing you thought it would be. I want to make this very clear. People who don't spend all of their time on Twitter, I do, and people who aren't invested in the movie industry, which is most people, they probably don't know this is a musical. When I broke that news to a couple of friends last night, they were baffled. And a couple of them were like, I don't believe you. Liar! While I was excited for the uniqueness and the creativity of it, and I was willing for it to blow me away, I believe the musical aspect of this movie is a misfire. Now, that's not me saying I'm bummed out they took a creative swing. No, I wish more comic book movies would do this. Try to do something different, swing for the fences, but in reality, while you're watching this movie, it feels as if they couldn't really come up with a story to fill the 2-hour and something runtime. And so they said to themselves, well, how do we get this movie to 2 hours or past 2 hours? Well, we cast Lady Gaga and throw in some musical numbers. Now, I don't expect to see Lady Gaga always sing in every movie that she's in because I was more excited to see her performance as Harley Quinn here, but every time she's on screen, it feels like she's breaking into a musical number. She starts to sing, which compromises the dialogue, and by the end of the film, even though there is that obvious romance there and you understand why Arthur feels the way he does, I had so many questions revolving around Harley's character to where I was kind of frustrated and bummed out that they didn't allow Lady Gaga to kind of flex her acting chops more so than her singing chops. It's really the other way around. And she's there to sound great. She sounds phenomenal, absolutely. And these musical numbers look incredible. This movie is one of the best looking comic book movies I've seen since the first Joker. All right, but like my co-host Ryan said, we've already gotten that, so we expect that to be the case. Now, if it wasn't the case, I would have been more bummed out, but it is the case. And if you're looking for a movie that looks good, if you're looking for a movie that has really impressive cinematography, a couple of one-take sequences that are absolutely incredible, and color grading through the roof, lighting that is impeccable, all of those things are present here. But without a story that feels like it has a purpose for existing, a lot of that is just, well, it's window dressing. It's beautiful window dressing, and I loved it, especially some of these stage sequences. By the way, shout out to the production design in this movie. Looks awesome. But at the end of the day, a lot of these musical numbers feel like filler for what lacks within the story, the writing, and the script. And that's my big issue with this film. It feels like an epilogue, which in reality it kind of should. But it feels like an epilogue that could have been summed up in a short book or a small novel, one that doesn't exceed like 20 pages. That's a really small novel. And it sucks that I feel that way because the bare bones of this movie just strip everything away. If you look at it conceptually, Joker is in Arkham going crazy by himself with security guards, a couple of nice performances in there, some side characters. Brendan Gleeson's in this movie. He's really good. And then he meets Harley Quinn. Once he meets Harley Quinn, it becomes a romance. Joker is infatuated with the idea of her. But after that, it becomes a courtroom drama. So really a couple of movies in one. And you hear me say that, it's kind of like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to see Joker in Arkham Asylum. I want to see what's going on inside of his head. And I guess that's kind of what some of these musical numbers are. When he imagines the reality that he's living in, and again, me saying all this sounds really, really good, but it ultimately just feels like the story doesn't really go anywhere. It's not moving at the pace that it should. And it's not asking, and not that I expect a comic book movie to ask questions that are just a revelation for the genre and exceed expectations by delivering the perfectly written script. And all right, relax, Austin. Not every comic book movie has to do that or deliver that. If you would have just delivered a sequel that went in a similar direction as the first, but had the pacing, had the style, had the impact, included more of Joker doing what he did in the first movie, I probably would have been more satisfied. Now, granted, again, this movie swings for the fences. I appreciate the swings. I do. Ryan said it really well. He's like, I want this movie to make all kinds of money because I want more directors to take risks. But sometimes you can swing and miss. I did a lot when I played baseball for 1 year in the 8th grade. That's why I moved to basketball. I wasn't good. Lots of swings and misses. So, Todd Phillips, I feel you.
Boo! You stink!
And I don't mind that it went in a completely different direction, but I kept sitting back and thinking to myself, this sequence feels like a tremendous waste of time. This scene feels so repetitive. They're doing musical numbers that ultimately serve the same purpose. Like 3 or 4 of these musical numbers that they do, it's saying the same thing as the last one did. And there are moments where I'm like, instead of singing Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, why don't you just say it? Because I feel like that would do a better job. And then, I don't want to be nitpicky, but I had certain questions about the logistics of certain things. There are things that Harley or Lee does in this movie where I'm like, how did she get in there? How did the security guard let her go past them? What she's saying here kind of makes sense, but they never bring it up for the rest of the film, and I ultimately felt like she was an underwritten character. At times a poorly written character. As a love interest to serve that purpose for the character development of Arthur Fleck, that kind of worked, but her as a whole, I just felt something missing while I was watching the movie, and that is a big deal because she's the co-lead of this film. The biggest disappointment for me, it felt like they kind of backtracked on Arthur Fleck's character, what he embraced by the end of the first Joker, and I'm not saying this is the case throughout the entire movie, but there are moments in the sequel where he just kind of does the opposite, says the opposite. That mentality completely shifts, but we never were able to dive deep enough into that to give me reason as to why he's feeling this way. And the courtroom aspect of this movie is great in theory, and there's one sequence that's actually really good, but they never fully lean into that, commit to that, and ultimately they skip certain pieces of that to where I said, this kind of should have filled up most of the movie. You could have done way more with this, deleted some of those musical sequences, and we would have had ourselves a more compelling thriller, if you will. But it's not a thriller. It's a romantic musical, and those musical sequences ultimately don't serve their purpose. I don't want it to sound like I hated this experience. There are absolutely bright spots. Like I said, Joaquin's performance and the look and feel of it all. Some of the side characters, the development. There's a version of Harvey Dent in this movie, and I'm like, why isn't he in the movie more?
I need it!
Also, there was one big sequence in the trailer that just wasn't in the movie, and I'm like, I really wanted to see the context of that. Also, there's no post-credit scene, so don't expect a tease. So a few questions for you. Are you a big fan of the first Joker, like I am? Were you looking forward to this? Are you a fan of the choice of this being a musical? Did you respond to those sequences better than me? Am I asking too many questions? Probably. Be sure to check out our next episode of the Movie Mode Podcast because Ryan and I are going to dive really deep into this film. And if you want to see a spoiler review, drop that like. We will do it if this gets to like 500 likes. We'll see. Making Folie À Deux a musical initially felt like a bold decision. Unfortunately, it just doesn't feel like the right decision. It begins to feel repetitive and unnecessary as we progress through this sequel that feels more like an extended epilogue. This just isn't a story that needed to be told, and it doesn't have the depth or impact of the first. Some choices are interesting, others are baffling, but hey, it swings for the fences. How many times am I going to say that in this review? Well, you know, let me know your thoughts on Joaquin Phoenix. Is he going to win the Oscar again? I see technical Oscars for this. Unfortunately, I don't see anything beyond that. Thank you so much for watching. You want to talk about that ending? We'll do it, baby. That's what she said. All right.